Shalom, I'm Rabbi Michael Panitz, the Rabbi of Temple Israel of Norfolk, Virginia. I'd like to speak to you at this time on the subject of dueling memories. In our country, so badly fractured into mutually antagonistic tribes, we do not only fight about substantive issues, we summon bile and spleen to contest words and symbols, too. And as if fighting about the present isn't enough to slake our thirst for inflicting wounds on the body politic of the nation, we also fight about what partisan version of the polemical past we shall insist on as the national narrative. I will return to this in the context of the controversy over renaming military installations to end their glorification of sworn enemies of the United States. But first, as is our method in these messages, we will ground our perspective in the teachings of the Bible. The scene. It is a month or a year and a month into the Sinai sojourn, and the Israelites' memories are being reshaped by current frustrations. Tormented by their privations, they romanticize their Egyptian circumstances. Enslaved, beaten, groaning from their bondage, they don't choose to remember that. Rather, they're thinking about the food they ate, or fantasized about having eaten in Egypt. Exodus chapter 16:3. The Israelites said to them, "Would that we had died by the Lord's hand in the land of Egypt, where we sat by the pots of meat when we ate bread to the full. For you have brought us out into this wilderness to kill this whole assembly with hunger." Numbers chapter 16, verse 13. Is it not enough that you brought us out of a land flowing with milk and honey to have us die in the wilderness? And many such other verses. Did the Israelites eat nutritious and varied and tasty fare in Egypt? They were, after all, not the chattel slaves of the antebellum American South. They lived in their own district, family by family. Their proximity to the eastern edge of the Nile Delta may have put them within reach of a decent range of food options. But the point of the Bible quotes is that they were signifying their diet incorrectly, whether they were in fact remembering it correctly or not. They were valorizing it as a sign of the superiority of their enslaved existence over their current freedom, with all its challenges and privations as well as its opportunities. And so is it in our United States today. We have people who intentionally misremember the past as part of their polemical stance regarding present controversies. On one side of the aisle, we have a growing chorus of the formerly silenced or marginalized, insisting that their experiences be recorded, reframed, and honored. On the other side, we have those hearkening back to the people who lost the Civil War and then won the post-Reconstruction era narrative. Those unreconstructed white supremacists put up the statues glorifying the defenders of slavery, statues that withstood even the civil rights movements of the mid-20th century. Now, with the new round of agitation after the murder of George Floyd, their lost cause mythology and its, quote, heritage not hate rhetoric of talking points have been challenged anew. One of the symbolic accomplishments of the pivot after the murder of George Floyd was the retirement of the name Fort Bragg for the North Carolina Army installation and its replacement by the name Fort Liberty. In deleting the name Bragg, the U.S. military acted upon the directive of the U.S. Senate, which had created a commission in 2021 to rename Department of Defense properties named after Confederate leaders. General Braxton Bragg had compiled a fairly lackluster career as a Confederate general, having been worsted in combat at the battles of Shiloh, Perryville, Stones River, and Tullahoma. While he did enjoy a temporary success at Chickamauga, success due to the participation of his more able colleague, James Longstreet, his forces were then routed by U.S. Grant, and Confederate President Jefferson Davis relieved him of command. Nonetheless, Bragg enjoyed local repute in his native North Carolina. And when the U.S. military underwent a major expansion in 1918, ramping up for its entry into the First World War, local boosterism accomplished what Bragg's military merit did not, so that the North Carolina Army installation was named after him. So much for heritage, not hate. It seems as if local pride and its deliberate disregard of history accounted for the glorification of his name in the first place. Perhaps his rank in the cadres of defenders of slavery was good enough for the ardent base namers of 1918. Our country was wrong to conflate the Union and Confederate military machines into one vast expression of patriotism. Perhaps there were those in the McKinley era who thought that they were unifying the country by that convenient lie. But such unity was based on the disregard of the root issue that drove the conflict, the original sin of the United States, its persistent racism. We should note that the Republican presidential hopeful Governor DeSantis of Florida has made a campaign pledge to restore the name of Fort Bragg to that military institution if elected. This provides a segue to another related issue. Just last week, in the midst of the tension between the DeSantis legislative action curbing the autonomy of the Disney Corporation in Florida over Disney's gender-tolerant politics and Disney's countersuits, a group of demonstrators combined their DeSantis campaign paraphernalia with Nazi flags. While the DeSantis press office was quick to speculate that the sporting of Nazi symbolism was a false flag diversion on the part of progressive agitators, our own respected watchdog organization, the Anti-Defamation League, quickly ascertained that the Nazi flag wavers were part of the group, quote, Order of the Black Sun, a Florida neo-Nazi group. The goal of the Order of the Black Sun is to normalize their form of anti-Semitism by making the sight of the Nazi flag a commonplace occurrence. Essentially, the neo-Nazis in Florida are trying to rewrite history. They want to make the espousal of Nazism something that a patriotic American can embrace. What unifies these two episodes in recent American history and the message of our Bible is this: people bent on wrongdoing want to subvert the record so that the wrong and the right are easily confused. But the truth is not so easily subverted. The slave fare in Egypt was the bread of affliction, as our Haggadah tells us. The military efforts of Braxton Bragg caused the death of American patriots and impeded the healing of our nation in its most grievous hour of crisis. And the Nazi flag wavers in Orlando are enemies of the better angels of the American nature. May we be on the side of those better angels of that nature. Amen.